Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome to the Seller Roundtable. I'm Amy Weiss, and my podcast partner, Andy Arnott, is out today. He's hanging out in Hawaii, so we gave him the day off. But I'm excited to be here with my friends Joe Pergolesi and Matt Perkins from Website Closers. And we are going to talk a little bit about what's going on with exiting e-commerce businesses today. A lot of stuff has changed. I mean, we had aggregators come on, a bunch of aggregators open up and start acquiring businesses. And then a lot of them have, I don't know, some of them have come crashing down, some things have changed. And then we look at the state of Amazon right now, and we look at how much traffic has really gone down. And I saw an article the other day about how orders from China are down 60%. And, there's a lot of questions about what's going on in the market. So I'm excited today to talk to the experts who work with people every single day to help them exit their e-commerce businesses. I'm excited to hear from you guys about what is going on. And before we get into that, why don't we start with a little introduction? Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. Thanks again, Amy. This is awesome that you do this for your members. Yeah, so my name is Joe Pergolesi, and I've been an entrepreneur myself actually for 30 years. I started my first business when I was 21, and that was in the brick and mortar space before Ecom. And I exited that business, and then I went on to start a food franchise that I grew to 400 franchisees across 5 countries. I had an Amazon business. All told, I've probably worked with over 1,000 entrepreneurs, start, scale, or exit, done consulting work for Airbnb, for Burton, had the pleasure of working with Steve Jobs and his executive team. So yeah, I've had 3 exits myself. I know the process because I've been through it myself, and I love what I do every day. This is exciting for me. I find this is the pinnacle of my career. So,
and I'm really proud to say that that Joe and Matt have been wonderful mentors to me. They've really helped me. They helped me learn all about how to get my numbers ready for exit. They helped me learn about how the right things to focus on. And so it's just great. I love having you guys as mentors. You're really, really great, and have really helped us a lot. So over to Matt.
That's really kind of you. Thank you, Amy. We've enjoyed working with you. So my background is very different from Joe's. Joe, entrepreneur since a teenager. I went to college, did the whole college thing, and got a degree in accounting, worked for one of the large accounting firms, and decided that's not what I wanted to do. And so I went looking, and I worked for a small consulting firm. I worked for a Fortune 500, been in a couple of different other businesses. And, I worked with a ton of phenomenal people across the globe. I worked with and managed teams all over. I mean, I got to go to, I got to go to China on somebody else's dime, and, travel Latin America with a company paying for it, and hit the UK as well. And, saw a lot of really cool things, but, it's just, when the opportunity came to work with Website Closers, I had some exposure in this M&A area. And I thought, man, I really enjoyed that. Not that I didn't enjoy some of the other stuff. I've worked in finance, accounting, I've done HR, payroll, I've worked with sales teams, I've worked in marketing teams, and done a whole bunch of different things. But there's something satisfying about being able to work one-on-one with somebody that has built something and is really proud of what they built, but ready to maybe move on to the next thing. Or maybe it's just they know that the time is right for them to move on to the next thing. And to be able to help people kind of that kind of capstone piece with a specific business and vision is always really, really rewarding.
I love that. Yeah, that would be exciting. I like consulting for the reason of helping people get past their fears and their barriers and helping them grow something, and I can imagine helping people exit, how exciting that would be, helping them move on to their next area of growth, and also, helping them take their baby and pass it on. So that's such a rewarding and beautiful thing. So just Moving us over to the state of e-commerce right now, I would love to hear from you guys. You know, you work with people every day, you make deals all the time, and you don't just do Amazon related businesses. You guys sell all kinds of different websites, e-commerce businesses at Website Closers. So I would love to just hear from you about what's going on in the market right now for exiting e-commerce businesses.
Yeah, go for it, Joe. We'll let you lead out on this one.
Okay. Well, historically, what we've seen the past couple of years is, like we were talking about, Amy, the aggregators came in and there was a lot of money being invested into these aggregators. A lot of private equity firms were propping up these shops, and there was very exorbitant multiples. There was a lot of enthusiasm and excitement about roll-ups, and what we saw going into 2022, you know, the state of the world, the financial world changed. And so with that, e-commerce changed, money changed, the accessibility of money, the rates of money, and spending changed. So 2022, actually, it's been really a challenging year for first-time sellers, for established sellers. We'll tell it to you straight, about 30 to 40% of the businesses that we started talking to, or that we talked to this year, have actually gone out of business. So the state of ecom is struggling. That's not to say that people's businesses are not being bought or sold, for that matter. It's the capital market constraints, it's consumer spending. I think that there was a lot of money in the system, and frankly, there's less buyers because those shops, those aggregators, have actually gone out of business themselves. We don't have the exact numbers, but Matt and I have actually worked with a number of aggregators over the past couple of years that actually have gone out of business, or they've pivoted their models. So as a general state of affairs, ecom in general has been tough. And again, that's not to say that businesses aren't being bought or sold, for that matter. In fact, it makes the competition that much more in a frenzy, because successful businesses are still sought after. So when one or two pops up, even a mediocre business is still being bought and sold. The competition does get a little intense. So multiples aren't as high as we used to see. However, our sellers are pretty pleased with what we're able to do for them.
You know, I love that you were just kind of honest about what's going on right now, because it is exactly that. Like, we can all look around, we see the traffic on Amazon going down, we see the orders, you know, from China coming down. You know, the market is changing. And at the same time, you know, I just got done with a Tony Robbins event last week, and he talked about, you know, don't let a recession scare you, because some of the most successful businesses in the world were started during a recession. So, you know, some of us might have to keep our hats on and try to stay in business this year and really get focused. And a lot of, you know, what you guys help businesses with is you help them get focused on those things that matter, so that their value of their business, they can stay in business and their valuation can be as good as it can be. But if you can hang on to your hat and continue to focus on those things that your customers need and continue to grow, then, you know, the market does this every once in a while. So, yeah, you know, we kind of know what's coming. And that's why we decided to, you know, get our stuff together and hang on and try to grow it a little bit more. And then, you know, hopefully when the market recovers, then we'll have an even more valuable, even more attractive business to sell. So I love that. And what would you say to a business that is in that position where they're, you know, they're trying to grow, but their sales are down because, you know, of all that? I mean, What would you say? When do
Yeah,
you make a decision to quit or to keep going and hopefully hold on for better days?
Yeah, I want to touch on something. I'm a big Tony Robbins fan as well, and I've been to the one I think you were at years ago. But mindset is a lot. Mindset is a lot, and I think it's really important, I think, to have peers, like what you've done with your group. And if someone's taking it really seriously, that they want to exit someday, to talk to a broker, to shoot Matt and I an email, because there's more to just selling your business than your P&L. And you touched on something that I think could bring a lot of optimism to a seller, which is there's sure some businesses are going out of business, and that's an opportunity to capture market share. And strategically, how do you do that? And mindset is a huge part of staying in the opportunist, and not the scarcity mindset. So I think first and foremost, it's understand that mindset's huge, and that during downturns, there's always opportunities. Where do you find them? That's the hallmark, I think, of a successful entrepreneur, is they can direct their attention to success. And I'll pass it back. I'll pass it to Matt, because I'm doing a lot of talking right now.
I mean, your comments reminded me of one of my old bosses. He said it was back in the late 90s, and everything was, hey, if it's got a .com at the end of it, people wanted it. And so he and one of the guys that he was working with, he said, we came up with this business plan. We were going to borrow $1 million, and we were going to start this business. And after the first quarter, we were going to take $500,000 out to the parking lot and burn it. And then the next quarter, we would go out and we would take $250,000 and we'd take it out into the parking lot and we would burn it. And then the following quarter, we would take $125,000. We'd take it out into the parking lot and we'd burn it. And then we would sell our business for, $100 million, because each quarter we burned less cash. Okay. And it's kind of like, that's almost like what when you hit COVID and you're going through 2020 and the beginning period of 2021, things just took off. And, it takes that focus and energy. It's a lot more difficult, but when you find the right place to be, when everything turns around, you are really, really well positioned, because you've been, now I guess I'll, not to carry on the old analogy, but you've been through the fire, and you've learned that, what it is that makes your business successful. And you can actually, when things turn around, you can then accelerate those items. And sometimes, sometimes that means selling your business and finding another opportunity. Sometimes it means doubling down on an element, and pushing through. And sometimes, occasionally, as it has been for some of our clients, because of maybe forces outside of the economy, family situations or otherwise, they decided to fold up shop. And every single one of those opportunities is available, even if your business is not really thriving. Joe and I, at the beginning of this month, just closed on a business that had an absolute killer 2021. $250,000 to the bottom line, great business. And we were able to then, actually in January, he did okay, but February, March, April, lost money every single month. And then it just started to sit around like $5,000 a month. He was looking at making maybe $60,000, $70,000 this year. We were still able to sell his business for a really good price. It's going to take him a little bit longer to get through it. But what he has found is he has found partners who are really well experienced and can really help him take his skills to the next level, to be able to learn, to grow, so that when he starts his next business, man, he's going to be fantastic. He's going to be really well positioned.
Yeah. And I think, the most important thing is whenever we talk about exits, we tell people, we encourage people, learn now how to value your business, because what you guys have taught me working with me is that, there are certain things that I'm tracking that a buyer doesn't care about. And I'm over here tracking it like it matters because I'm trained as an Amazon seller. I'm trained as by my tools, by my tool dashboards, those kinds of things. And I'm over here looking at this, and I've kind of got, that laser focus. And you guys have been able to show me like, hey, this is what a buyer is going to look at. These are the things we need to fix. And I didn't even realize those things. The other thing that was really important that you guys helped me with is kind of seeing, the forest for the trees, right? Looking at the whole big picture. I was spending time trying to revive old products, ones that were at the end of their life cycle, instead of looking at my best sellers and capturing even more market share, the most profitable things. I was not looking at my burn rate and going, hey, this one product could more than cover my burn rate, and I could scale it even more and really have more on my bottom line because I'm over here, I'm a fixer. And a lot of us are fixers in our business, right? So we get in here and we're like, okay, this was my first baby product. I really like it. I really want to make sure it keeps selling. Like maybe I'll try this and maybe I'll try this. And meanwhile, your cash cow's over here just hanging out, making money on its own, but it could be making so much more. So just changing the focus, sometimes just having another set of eyes, like you talked about, Matt, with this man who sold his business, but he found these partners. And so, we've brought on some additional operators to our business lately, and it's been so good because they've been able to look at it and go, guys, this part that you're doing over here, it makes no sense. It's not scalable. And because we had our heads down working in our business the whole time, we didn't realize, oh, wow, that isn't scalable. That actually doesn't make sense. So bringing in somebody else to actually take a look at it for you, it's what you guys do, right? Take a look at it for you, help you out. And then what's wonderful about what you guys do is you have all these use cases, you have all this experience with different types of businesses, and you can look at a business very easily, just like I can, because I work with thousands of Amazon sellers in tons of different categories. I can go, yeah, that's not going to work for you. I've already seen 10 people try that. That's not going to work, right? So that's the beauty of having another set of eyes on the business, right?
Exactly. It's very akin to real estate, because you live in your home and you're so used to quote unquote the flaws, or you're so used to the rooms and the things that you love about your home. And then you have a realtor or even your friend come over and point something out that you have overlooked because you've just become, numb to it. But yeah, you're dead spot on. Having somebody else come in and again, like if it's somebody in your mastermind or a group or a coach like you, or if you're thinking eventually that you want to exit, like sooner we can step in and start helping you understand what we call buyer speak. Yeah. What buyers are looking for, we can, clean up the flaws, and we can even tell you, hey, spend more time on this, like you've learned along the way. So yeah, 100%. And I think some of it comes down to trust. It's opening up something very personal, and trust, in this case, has to be earned. And we hope that people see the transparency, because there's a lot of alignment in what we do. We do this for a living. We do this every single day. So.
Yeah. So speaking of you guys doing it every day, I love like having people that do insurance or something like that, because I'm like, ooh, let's tell all the stories, right? Like, let's give some good stories. So let's talk about the weirdest e-commerce business. Can we talk about the weirdest? Like, you guys have told me that there's like drop ship. I never thought that a drop shipping business could be sold, and you guys have sold drop shipping websites, right? So can you tell a story about an interesting e-commerce business that you never thought, within what you're allowed to talk about, right? But that you guys never thought would sell. And then I want to get into some of the biggest mistakes that people make when they come to you, when you're like, oh my gosh, they got to fix this and this. But can you tell me a good story about an e-commerce business that I probably would think wouldn't sell?
Maybe the one that I was just telling you about earlier. Goodness sakes. So it's in the health and fitness product category. Did not sell on Amazon. He actually sold on his own Shopify website because wanting to charge a premium price point. We know that people go to Amazon, they want a deal. And so Facebook advertising was like an absolute key for this seller. And it got to the point where the margins were great, but then you start looking at what the return on his ad spend was, and it was just dropping month after month after month after month. And, losses, and maybe getting a couple $1,000s to the bottom line, and having, $15,000, $25,000, $30,000 in inventory, and just like thinking, man, who in the world is going to buy this thing? We had it listed originally for $1 million because it was a $250,000 bottom line, and it just absolutely tanked. We're like, maybe if we can get it, like, just, maybe we can get 400, like, before it, like, the whole thing just falls apart. I don't know. Like, we'll see if there's anything. And, it just so happened that there was somebody that was looking for something in this specific niche. And they're like, look, we'll pay you a little bit of cash up front, but you're going to end up having to stick around for a while to be able to get the rest of it, and you'll have a hand in it. It's not like an aggregator where you hand it off to them and they run it, and you're at their mercy as to whether or not you end up getting paid at the end of it.
Earnouts.
Yeah, you just sit there and pray and hope you don't have to file a lawsuit, which I've read some of those. Not fun. This was, hey, you're still involved in the business. You're going to get paid a salary, and you're going to get paid on this earnout if you are able to perform.
And when you talked about that business, I think it's really interesting because there's still value, even though maybe the product that they were selling was kind of going down in the trend, or maybe it was getting saturated. It was at the end of its life cycle, and that's why the Facebook ads weren't performing anymore. But there's still value. Like, this person they know the funnels, they've got the successful sales funnel set up, they know their targeting, they know their audience. So it just takes another product to be added to that mix. And someone else trying to replicate that from scratch, that's worth how many hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential losses, especially if you're trying to replicate having a Shopify business in that niche. Wow. I mean, I still see it as valuable. That's really cool that you guys were able to work that deal.
I mean, it was crazy because what had happened is, and when we were first looking at it, it was, well, I was only spending 5 hours, 10 hours a week on the business anyway. So I wanted to hand it off to an agency. And that's when it just absolutely just nosedived. And so we were kind of hoping that was just 100% the reason, and that the product was okay, and that the market was okay, and that everything would come back. And it just didn't. It came back a little bit, but
I would love to hear, speaking of outsourcing to an agency, I would love to hear, let's get into some mistakes that people are making, right? Because I see that a lot as a consultant, right? As a consultant, I see people come to me and they won't know anything about PPC, and they outsource their pay-per-click advertising before they know anything about it, right? And they're just like spending so much money, and they haven't provided any direction to that ads agency. And so they end up not seeing an ROI. When you guys are evaluating businesses, what are some of those mistakes that you see in terms of outsourcing and oversight, and some of the fixes that you've seen for that?
Yeah. Well, what we've learned throughout the years is there's very few good agencies, and there's a lot of bad agencies. In Matt's case, in the business that Matt's talking about, that was really sad because he really had a great great knack and a great handle on his marketing, and then in 3 months they managed to tank the business, which was really unfortunate. And we see that actually quite a bit. So I think that not to beat a dead horse here, but properly vet your agencies, because it's common that they'll tank a business. So that's a big mistake that we see right there. The second that we see is not really having the right proper financials. In other words, the structure of their books, and not really going over their books on a regular basis, which they should be. And there's a lot of money that you could see being wasted or misallocated if you regularly learned. And I was terrible at my books for the first business. I had no idea how to read expenses or anything like that. I was fortunate that I ended up selling it, but I had somebody help me. And another really common thing that I like to tell people about talking about mistakes in general is, if you've never sold any of your businesses before, don't go into this process with a lot of assumptions, because there's so many factors that go into what we do every day. I mean, the skill set that we have to know is pretty vast, and with that comes a lot of possibilities that a seller may never consider. In other words, I tell the story that the franchise I started was a pizza franchise. And when I went to sell it, I was like, sure, I was certain. So someone who owned like an Italian restaurant, or, I was just dead set on like who I thought was going to buy a pizza franchise. And as it turns out, someone from Sri Lanka bought it. So you could just never, ever anticipate. And it's unfortunate, because a lot of people will build their businesses under the assumption that they know exactly the right person that's going to buy it. Don't go there. Don't make a mistake, because that's a big mistake. You will, that's a big mistake. So
speaking of competitors, you assume, like for me, I'm like, oh, I'm hoping that maybe I could be acquired by a competitor. And so I started doing outreach to some competitors this year, and last part of 2021. And some of the competitors that I reached out to were acquired. So that wasn't their mindset, was acquiring other businesses. All of a sudden I looked them up later and to follow back up with them, and they were on one of the aggregators websites. And I was like, oh my gosh, so I was making those assumptions. But before, I love reaching out to a broker like you guys to kind of get an understanding. But if people are looking to find a buyer on their own, if they're looking to do some outreach, right? If they're looking to reach out to their competitors and say, hey, I'm thinking about putting my business on the market. You want an offer? Do you have any advice there on how people can think about that and think about potential opportunities and types of buyers that might be interested in businesses?
Yeah, there's advantages and disadvantages to doing cold outreach, and especially to your competitors. I'll pass it to Matt, because we have a couple of stories around that too.
Yeah, it can be phenomenal, right? It can be perfect if you've got somebody. I mean, it can be a great match. I mean, we have, and this isn't necessarily a competitor, but we have somebody that is selling a group, and there's a member of the group, longtime member of the group, that they ended up reaching out to and said, hey, I'm actually looking at selling it. We're listing it. Do you think you'd be interested? And it was, I mean, it seems like, from at least, from a culture perspective, from, all of those kinds of the intangibles, all of those kind of, those you can plan for, you can meet, and you can make them all happen. One of the things that we sometimes see is you reach out to a competitor and it's oh, you're for sale, are you? Interesting. And it could be well, I might be interested in acquiring your business. Even if they're really, really, really interested, you reached out to them. And so they're now in a position of strength. And so, you've got to start to share some information that maybe otherwise you don't necessarily want to. You got to be careful about what you're sharing, what it is that you're telling them, and your conversations have to be measured. And it makes it a little bit more challenging, especially if you don't have a broker or some sort of intermediary that's helping you through the process. So it can be really, really good. But I'm trying to think. I don't, Joe,
The
have we
cosmetic
sold?
business,
Oh, oh,
we
yeah.
were, we had a great business that we were working with. This woman had been online selling for 25 years. 20, she was the dawn new age of the internet. She was there. And so I'll let Matt tell the story. Yeah, you tell
Yeah,
us.
the business was it was in a little bit of a decline. I think like a lot of e-commerce businesses, through that second half of 2021 and hitting into 2022, I think a lot of people had some struggles in those periods, especially early this year. But we listed the business, and somebody had approached our seller previous to our conversation with her, and did the introduction, had the conversations, and we didn't share a ton of information. And we kind of blacked out some information. We held some stuff back, but gave them kind of some high level information on categories and sales and things like that. And the seller ended up looking at the competition, and eventually this company started to show up more and more in her specific niche, and with what her hero products were.
And the keywords,
Yeah.
they figured out her keywords, and here's what ends up happening. Unfortunately, like, it was too late for us to clean it up because she had shared some things that we normally wouldn't have wanted to. And it's a really delicate process. It does work, cold outreach is, but if you really don't do it in a methodical manner, like, you could hand over the keys to your kingdom, like.
Yeah, out of that blind trust, right? So, I mean, nothing wrong with some cold outreach to gauge some interest, and but then when it actually comes to sharing more information about it, we really come back to those agencies, right? Due diligence, due diligence, due diligence. Is there anything that I have to lose here? It's like a competitive analysis, you do really want to think about that. And, trade secrets are worth a lot, and so letting somebody in behind the curtain. Yeah, that's why it's good to have somebody trusted. I love being able to reach out to you guys and go, hey guys, I got this person reached out to me about, what do I do with this, right? So it's been really, really awesome. So we actually have a guest in the group today. Karen's here, and she said she would love to know about selling a business with a utility patent, and what comes in, as far as valuation goes. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question, Karen. So a utility patent is going to increase the value of your company. That's first and foremost. It's one of the arts, and when we do valuations, there's an art and a science to it. The science you can find in the numbers, the art are in all these peripheries, IP, social media presence, on and on and on. There's just dozens of things that can peripherally increase the value. So looking at your question, it looks like you're also asking about selling the rights or licensing the rights. And everything is on the table. When you're in the driver's seat selling your business, you actually get to call the shots. When working with us, you're going to get advice. We're going to share a plethora of different options, different scenarios. And in this case, if with this question, how we would advise you, we would say what do you want to do? If you're going to sell the business with the utility patent, you're probably going to get more buyers interested. You might get more money. If you want to, let's say, retain the rights or license the rights out with the right buyer, you potentially can get the same deal. Or maybe it's a reduction in price, but the upside of you having the licensing patent still in hand could potentially equal more than what you could ever sell the business for. So this is sort of an analysis. There's also the component of non-compete. I think in your question, some buyers will require a non-compete. Now, others may not, and this is another. If I can open this up for just really quickly, we vet a lot of buyers, and we could sniff a bad buyer out. We could sniff a good buyer out because we just talk to so many people. And one of the deeper, I think, not lessons, but insights that we could offer people is, like you said it in the beginning, like, look at the forest through the trees. So you might find the perfect buyer who you want to partner with. So your dream might be to start another brand, but maybe you found a great partner who wants the primary business and is so cool that they want to do a joint venture with you. And so now you have a decision point that isn't just based on money, it's based on relationship. So, the question about, can you create another brand using the utility patent? It would be buyer dependent, but we would advise you to just keep your options open, and potentially you can start a JV with somebody. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. It's a good one. It's a really good.
Everything's on the table is what we're understanding. It's like, you should understand that it's your deal and you can work it how you'd like to work it. And there's a ton of different types of buyers and a ton of different types of options. Right. Yeah. I think that is a good point there, right? To sum that up. I would love to know, when people are even thinking about, like, maybe I'd like to sell this year, or maybe I'd like to sell next year, or maybe I'd like to, when is the right time? Because I know for me, I could be kicking myself, right? Because I waited too long. I waited to talk to someone to help me sell my business until I was like at the point where I'm like, I can't, like, I don't have time for this. Like, it was very difficult. And then the things that I needed to fix, the things that I needed to clean up that would provide the most value to me, the focus areas that I needed to change, those were the things, like I said, that I could have kicked myself for, because I learned so much just working with you guys and talking about this process and learning what I needed to do, that I could have done. If I had done that at the very beginning, obviously not right when I was just starting my business, but like a year in, when I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I'm going to exit in a year or two. I should have started the conversation then, because then I would have learned what to focus on, and that would have really, really helped me. So I don't have any regrets, coulda, shoulda, woulda now, but can you guys talk a little bit about timing? When should people start talking to a broker? When should people start thinking about preparing to sell and the areas that they need to focus on?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually, so my brother actually just today texted me about a business opportunity, and he said, "Hey, would you want to go in on this?" And being in the business that I'm in, I start going through all of the questions that I would want to ask a seller, try and gather all this information and understand all of these different data points and in all of the different elements of the business. And it takes me back to as a CPA, a continuing education conference that I was in back in, I think, like 2010. And I'm sitting there, and it was done by a guy that did middle market, kind of 500 million to kind of $3 billion businesses, or like low nine figures up to, billion-dollar businesses. They did this M&A stuff. And that's really where kind of my interest in M&A started. And he asked the audience, he said, okay, when this same question, when do I start planning for my exit? When do I have those conversations? And you got a couple of answers. And he said, well, the right answer is before you even start. And he said, now and then he asked, now when's the second best time to start to consider an exit and to start having those conversations? So the answer is today. As I was going through and thinking about this business opportunity that my brother was kind of throwing out there, I'm thinking, okay, well, where's my exit point? Where am I going to make my money? Yes, there's a business in the middle, but at the end of the day, if I'm going to invest time, energy, money, whatever it may be, when is that coming back to me? And in what form? And so that's really like, as soon as you can have that conversation, because you don't want to get to the point where, as you were talking about, I feel like I'm kind of wiped out.
Yeah.
I think I'm tapped. I don't think I can do this anymore. And then you realize, well, I got to do X, Y, Z, and I got to go back and I got to do A, B, and C too.
Yeah, you got to get like remotivated. That's such good advice. I want to turn it around and talk about the best businesses. So the people that have come to you guys that are ready to sell, and you're like, wow, you got it. We can't wait to put this thing on the market. This is the deal. Like, you did everything right. So give our sellers who are listening to the Seller Roundtable podcast right now, give them that checklist of the best businesses that you've seen. Like, what did they do right? Because it'll help us get our focus of, what we should be focusing on.
Yeah. The thing to think about is, with a business, you're building a cake, and there's different layers to the business. And the first layer is financials. At the end of the day, is it the most important? It could be, it could not be, depends. But the first real layer of the cake is the financials. It's the foundation. And if your financials are clean and they're easy to navigate, and the seller understands them, we can ask questions if they're categorized properly, that just accelerates the process, because a buyer is going to be analyzing those financials with X-ray vision in ways that you maybe would have never have done. So when we see a business with clean financials, it's like maybe half the work that we have to do. And if we don't have to spend that much time on financials, that means we can spend a whole lot more time on all the other fun, exciting, easier things to do. So we've seen, just today alone, there was 3 businesses. One is they sell audio files. Another one is in the construction business. And this other one is this mastermind group, this Amazon mastermind group. And their financials, all 3 companies, were like awesome. And their revenues in this market, their revenues were, let's say, level up to scaling by 30-40%. These sellers, all 3 of them, never really took their foot off the gas. They have a clean idea of what they want to get out of the business. And this parlays into the previous question. People need to really think about this. This is like a gold nugget. Are you building cash flow, or are you building equity? Because you're going to make different decisions if you're building equity than if you're building cash flow. And a lot of people get caught in the trap of building cash flow, and that's essentially building yourself a job, right? Did you build a job, or did you build a company? And the sooner we can engage a seller and help them evolve into a company, clean the company up, there's less, as we call it in the industry, there's less hair on the deal. There's less things that we have to groom. So when you're doing a cake, first and foremost is when you're building a business or building a cake, the first is always the financials. The second is supply chain, making sure your supply chain is great. If you have any defensible space like Karen has, which is an IP, shoring up contracts, huge. If you're an agency, here's a big one. For anybody that's listening that has an agency, get contracts, right? Long-term contracts. Can you get a 6-month contract? Can you get a 3-year contract? And sometimes you might not want a contract. Well, if you're unsure, reach out to us and we can help you navigate that. I would say those two things, at least in the top of my list, when, financials, contracts are always a big deal.
I would agree with the financials part. That one took us the longest because you guys took a comb and went through my financials and you're like, what is this? And some of the stuff, you're going back years. And some of the stuff, because we weren't looking at the books, we were like, we outsourced that to our accountant, and we weren't having regular meetings with our accountant, we were learning all these things. And some of those charges that you guys looked at, we didn't know either. We were like, we don't know what that is, but it affected the bottom line in a big way. And so the lessons that we learned from that, and now, we've been able to triple our profits because we understand the numbers now. And you don't have to understand them to the level that your accountant or your bookkeeper is tracking them. That's what I learned from you guys. But I needed to understand the unit economics, what went where, and the bottom line for each product, how much it was costing me, how much it was making me, and then what portion of my total, monthly cash flow that was impacting, right? What percentage, for example, of my total P&L was, these specific expenses. So I'm getting a handle on that really helped me understand that. And if I had understood the baking of the cake from the beginning, and these are things we all learn, right? But if I had understood that, I would have saved so much time, because then you're not backtracking going, oh, we spent money on this, right? Oh, we made a $20,000 shipping mistake. That was, we had Brandon Young had an event the other day, and he had us each put our biggest Amazon mistake or our biggest seller mistake. And that was mine. I was like, $20,000 shipping mistake. And, it was just kind of like, yes, that's what happens when we don't pay attention to the layers inside of the financial layer of our cake. So yeah, I love that advice. And supply chain too, having your contracts, really, I had no idea that having contracts with my suppliers actually added value to my business. But if you don't even know who your supplier is, you just have like an Alibaba relationship with them, how is that protecting another buyer who's now taking that risk on, right? And like you were saying, equity or cash flow. At first, I wasn't really sure what you were talking about. But then when you said, did you build yourself a job? Because a buyer doesn't want to buy a job. They want to buy a business that's operating, that has those systems, right? So yeah, that's a really great thing to think about, is like, okay, could I actually pass this off tomorrow? If I sold my business tomorrow, if I have somebody come and offer me a good chunk of change for my business, would I be stuck in it, or could I actually hand it off? So
right. Yeah, I had this old saying in one of my businesses. It was the plane crash scenario. If I went down in a plane crash, would the business still survive the next day?
Yes. Yes.
And I would add one more thing to Joe's comments. The other thing that we love to see, right? And it has to do with financials, but and we tell people the right time to sell is when you're going on the way up, because not when you've already crested and you're on your way down. The difference in valuation for you as a seller is huge. A lot of people are hesitant to sell when they're growing because that's what they see, and that's all that they see. They see growth, and that's what they see for the foreseeable future. And then when it turns, everything changes. So that's absolutely one of the other things that I would just add to that, is the timing element is really important. And so we like to see growing businesses, because we know that people are much more interested in those than others.
Yeah, you guys taught me that about month over month tracking. What's the trend? What's going on? And knowing that at the unit level. And I've been working with my clients on that, and it has been a game changer for them. I've seen people turn around their businesses and just tracking those unit economics. And you can't get that in your Helium 10 dashboard or your Zon Guru dashboard. You can't do that. You've got to understand how it plays into your P&L, how it plays into your balance sheet, what's going on. Again, you don't need to be an accountant. Numbers scare people. You don't need to be like Matt. I turn to Matt when I have questions about numbers because he just makes it make sense. But you don't have to worry about taking over for your accountant. But should you know what that product is doing for your bottom line? Absolutely. And should you know how that plays into your balance sheet and your P&L? Absolutely. And that is just huge.
Yeah.
All right. So wrapping it up.
One other thing to add to
go
that.
ahead.
It's intermingling of brands or businesses. If possible, separate your books between your brands, unless you think eventually someday you might want to sell all of them together. But if they're each their own individual entity, even as something as simple as separate bank accounts, they don't need to be separate LLCs or S corps for that matter. I think all businesses really should be at least LLCs, but please, if you're listening to this right now, do yourself a favor, get a sole company credit card, get a sole business checking account, maybe savings account to put some money every month towards taxes so you don't get behind the 8 ball come March. So anyway, that's talk about mistakes. Going back a few questions, like intermingling of personal finance. You can run personal finances through your company. Great. We love that. But have a sole dedicated business account that you can move money through.
Right.
Yeah, we use a lot of personal credit cards in our business, but we learned from our accountant, if you're going to use a personal credit card for your business, you only use that for your business. You don't use it for personal, right? So it's like, it's okay to use those personal assets because your business doesn't always have the credit, that it needs, but you need to keep them separate. You shouldn't be using them, you should be paying them and keeping them separate. Yeah, for sure. That's really awesome advice. So speaking of advice, guys, we always end the show with, and then we're going to ask, how people can get in contact with you guys if they want to go over their business and understand some of these things. But before we get to how to contact you guys, I want to know from each of you, 2 questions. The first one, what is your number 1 piece of business advice for a seller? And then the second one is your favorite, most impactful business book or podcast.
Matt, you go first.
How about goodness, my number 1 piece of advice, I think, when it comes to for a seller is to and this is just because I am an accountant, right? Is make sure you know what's actually going through your business. And I'll throw a story in here if that's okay. If we got the time. We've got a guy, phenomenal business. He grew the business through the roof in almost no time flat and made $6 million, $5 million like the first couple of years. And in the 3rd year, absolutely went down to $2 million. We're looking at the P&L and I'm saying, what in the world happened with your payroll expense? Because you were running $150,000, down $150,000. I mean, so a good sized business, right? And it jumped up to 250. And it went up to like $350,000. He's like, well, I think there might've been an extra pay period. I'm like, you don't know what you have. He comes back after he did a full-on deep dive with a consultant that he brought in. I asked the question and he's like, I'll just ask the accountant. I'm sure it's okay. They had serious problems with their commission structure and they were double paying their commissions. Know what you're doing, know what is going through your bank account, know what's going through on your P&L. It's easy to lose track of things when you're not watching them. Those things that are measured improve at a rate that is greater than those that you just kind of pay attention to and just look at every once in a while. So yeah, take the measurements and run with them. You're gonna have to give me a second on the book. Let's circle back to that one. I'm gonna turn it over to Joe because I got to think about which book I like.
Sure. It's funny, Matt, you were talking about measuring, circling back to the very beginning, Tony Robbins's mindset. I think the entrepreneurial mindset should always include curiosity. I think curiosity is one of those skills that keeps you level-headed and keeps you on edge, keeps you thinking about the next opportunity, keeps you thinking about what you can do better, prevents you from thinking about that you know everything, and then you're open to community. One of the greatest, I think, things that hamstrings a lot of entrepreneurs or keeps people even from starting a business is the loneliness factor, staying up super late at night. So I think that, the mindset is the number one biggest thing, I think, in entrepreneurship, because, you've done this a couple of times during the blinders, and it's easy to think that you're digging yourself a hole, whereas somebody else might see it as an opportunity. So yeah, to be the yin to Matt's yang, mindset is critical, and being around positive people who can paint a different perspective, whether it's, again, someone in a mastermind or, Matt and I are no fee. We're happy to take a call, talk to you once a quarter, once a year until you're ready. Like, we love what we do every day. And in terms of the book, I'm a huge fan of HBR, Harvard Business Review, but this was the first book I ever read for business.
Growing a Business by Paul Hawken.
It is a classic, and you wouldn't believe the wisdom that you could pull out of beginning with the end in mind and thinking about the origins of a business. It's so approachable. It's so easy to read. Whether you have a business or starting a business, this is the book. And then I have to give my mentor shout out, Buying and Selling a Business by Ira. I worked with Ira for 2.5, 3 years. He wrote this for Entrepreneur Magazine. It's a beast. You're better off just calling Matt and I, and we'll summarize it for you.
I love it. All right. What about you, Matt? Your book.
So I'm going to take a different twist on this. Joe is, building a business. I've read a bunch. I'll take a step back. My father was a psychologist, marriage and family therapist, and an entrepreneur. And so the emotional intelligence elements of things really intrigue me. And the interpersonal pieces. And my father was an amazing, amazing person in a number of respects. But one of the books that lends, then the reason I bring that up, my book is more of the soft skills side. It's called Crucial Conversations. And I had a copy of it here. Crucial Conversations is there are also seminars and things of that nature put on by the group that put the book out. A phenomenal communicating tool to help understand how to be able to navigate conversations when it's really, really difficult, when you're really, really, really upset about something because somebody screwed up, your agent screwed up, or, your supplier screwed up, or somebody messed up and in a bad way. How can you navigate that situation? Or maybe you screwed up and you're trying to deal with a customer or one of your employees. How do you navigate that? Absolutely one of the best books when it comes to those kinds of elements.
Love it. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Tell everybody, how can they reach you? How can they get that conversation going about selling their business today or in the future, anytime?
Yeah. Please, if you're listening, do not hesitate. Matt and I love to talk to business owners every single day. So just don't hesitate. If you have a simple question or you want us to do evaluation, there's never any pressure. So please feel free to email us. My email address is jpergolisi@websiteclosers.com, and I'll spell that JPERGOLIZZI@websiteclosers.com.
Yeah. And yeah, you can find us both on LinkedIn as well. We also have some pages on the Website Closers page, websiteclosers.com/broker /broker/ mine is Matt-Perkins. Joe's is Joe-Pergolisi. My email address is mperkins@websiteclosers.com. So yeah, look forward to talking with some of you.
Yeah, you guys have been just really wonderful and such a help. And I know the biggest thing that people should know is that they shouldn't be afraid to reach out and talk to a broker. They shouldn't be afraid to reach out and talk. You guys aren't going to charge them for a consultation. This is what you do. You do hope that you earn their business. But, we've been working together for quite a while because, I'm not ready to sell yet, and I'm continuing to grow. And you guys have been so patient and wonderful with me, and I've loved having you as a resource. So thank you for that. And I would just want to encourage everybody else, don't be afraid to reach out to a broker. That's not, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain as far as the learning experience. So hopefully, you guys have learned something today from Joe and Matt's knowledge and stories, and yeah, that you've done that. So thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode, and please rate, review, subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. And again, thank you, Joe and Matt, for being here today.
Yeah. Thank you, Amy. You have a killer business and a great community. Thank you.